The wine glass shattered before Talia could catch it. Her hands froze mid-reach as crystal exploded across marble floors, red liquid spreading like blood under the candlelight. Every head in La Valtoria turned. The manager's eyes found hers instantly, cold, sharp, blaming. "Clean it," Silvio hissed through clenched teeth, his voice low enough that only she could hear. And pray Mr. Hahn didn't notice. She dropped to her knees, gathering fragments with trembling fingers. The floor was cold. Her vest hung loose on her frame, 2 sizes too big because the restaurant refused to order her a proper fit. Around her, conversations resumed in hushed tones. Forks scraped plates. Ice clinked in glasses. But someone was still watching. She felt it like heat on the back of her neck. Talia glanced up slowly, careful not to draw more attention. Across the dining room, seated at table 9, was a man who looked like he'd been carved from stone. Silver hair. Dark suit that probably cost more than her yearly rent. His hands rested on the table, perfectly still. His eyes were locked on her. Not the spilled wine. Not the mess. Her. "Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is." She looked away quickly, pulse hammering. Rich men stared sometimes. She'd learned to ignore it. But this felt different. Heavier. Like he was searching for something specific. "Move faster," Silvio snapped under his breath. "You're embarrassing us." She swept faster, dropping shards into her apron. Her mother's necklace slipped free from under her collar, the silver heart pendant catching light as it swung forward. She tucked it back quickly, a reflex born from years of keeping precious things hidden. When she stood, the man was still staring. His expression hadn't changed, hadn't softened, but his fingers had curled slightly against the table, knuckles white. Talia carried the broken glass toward the kitchen, legs unsteady. Behind her, she heard his voice for the first time, low, controlled, speaking rapid Korean to someone beside him. The door swung shut behind her, muffling the dining room noise. Her co-worker Deshawn looked up from polishing silverware. "You good?" "Table 9, she whispered. "Who is he?" Deshawn's face went pale. "You don't know. Should I?" He set down the fork slowly. "That's Han Jae-suk. People don't say his name out loud if they can help it." Her stomach dropped. "Why?" "Because when he walks into a room, empires hold their breath." Talia's hands were still shaking when Silvio burst through the door, his face twisted with something between panic and rage. "He asked for you specifically," Silvio said, each word clipped. "Table 9. Now." She didn't move. "Now, Talia." The moment his eyes locked onto mine, I knew something was wrong. Have you ever felt someone looking at you like they're trying to solve a mystery written on your skin? Drop a comment below. Talia had learned to be invisible by the time she was 7. The trick was simple. Never make eye contact, never speak unless spoken to, never take up more space than absolutely necessary. It worked in foster homes. It worked in group shelters. It worked here, among people who wore watches worth more than her mother's funeral. She approached table 9 with her head slightly bowed, order pad clutched against her chest like a shield. The closer she got, the more the air seemed to thicken. His security detail, 2 men in dark suits positioned near the walls, tracked her movement with predator eyes. Mr. Hahn sat motionless, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Up close, he looked older than she'd first thought. Maybe 60, lines carved deep around his mouth, but his gaze was sharp, calculating. "Good evening, sir," she said softly, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "Can I get you anything else?" He didn't respond immediately, just studied her with an intensity that made her want to step backward. Then he spoke in perfect English, barely above a whisper. "Your name?" It wasn't a question. It was a command wrapped in silk. "Talia Miran, sir." Something flickered across his face, too fast to read. He leaned forward slightly, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something else. "Cedar, maybe, or smoke." "How long had you worked here?" 8 months. "And before that?" Her fingers tightened around the pad. I don't understand what." "Answer the question." His tone hadn't risen, hadn't sharpened, but the weight behind it made her throat go dry. "I worked at a diner in Brooklyn," she said carefully. "Before that, I was finishing my GED. He nodded slowly, as if filing the information away. His gaze dropped to her hands, then traveled up to her face again. Searching, always searching. You're saving money, he said. It wasn't a question. For nursing school, she admitted, unsure why she was telling him anything. Your mother, is she proud? The floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet. She passed away when I was 7. For the first time since she'd approached, his expression shifted. His jaw tightened, his fingers uncurled, flattening against the white tablecloth. I see, he said quietly. The silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable. Around them, the restaurant hummed with low conversation and clinking silverware, but at table 9, the world had narrowed to just the two of them. Talia shifted her weight, unsure if she'd been dismissed. Sir, if you need anything. The wine, he interrupted. The Chateau Margaux, 1995. Bring it. She blinked. That bottle cost more than 3 months of a rent. Of course. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her again. Talia. She froze. Yes, sir. Be careful with it. It felt like he wasn't just talking about the wine. It felt like he wasn't just looking at me, but searching for something. What would you do if someone powerful started asking about your past? Tell us in the comments. The wine vault was in the basement, past the kitchen and down a narrow stairwell where the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Talia's footsteps echoed against concrete walls as she descended, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. She found the bottle exactly where the sommelier had said it would be, 3rd shelf, behind the French reserves. The glass was dark, the label aged and delicate. She cradled it like a newborn as she climbed back up. Her mind kept circling back to table 9, to the way Mr. Hahn had looked at her, to the questions that felt less like curiosity and more like interrogation. Your mother, is she proud? How could he have known to ask that? How could he have guessed she was saving money, that she'd clawed her way up from nothing with nothing but stubbornness and the memory of her mother's voice telling her to be strong? The kitchen was chaos when she passed through, line cooks shouting orders, pans sizzling, steam rising in thick clouds. She moved through it like a ghost, clutching the wine bottle against her chest. When she pushed back into the dining room, Silvio intercepted her immediately. What did he say to you? He demanded, grabbing her elbow hard enough to bruise. Nothing. He just ordered wine. Don't lie to me, girl. I saw him watching you. She yanked her arm free. He asked my name. That's all. Silvio's eyes narrowed. If you do anything to embarrass this establishment, I won't. You better not. Because if service ratings drop, you're gone. I don't care if you end up on the street. He released her and stalked away, leaving her standing in the middle of the floor with a wine bottle still pressed against her chest and her heart pounding in her ears. She forced herself to breathe, to move. Table 9 waited. Mr. Hahn's security detail watched her approach with unblinking attention. She set the bottle down carefully on the table, hands steady despite the adrenaline singing through her veins. Chateau Margaux, 1995, she said softly. He nodded once. Open it. She pulled the corkscrew from her apron, positioned it carefully, and began a twist. The cork came free with a soft pop. She poured a small amount into his glass, watching the dark liquid catch the candlelight. He lifted the glass, swirling it once before bringing it to his lips. Tasted. Set down. Acceptable. She started to step back, but her necklace chose that exact moment to slip free from her collar again. The silver chain catching on the edge of her vest and pulling the heart-shaped pendant into full view. The candlelight hit it directly. Mr. Hahn's hand shot forward. His fingers closed around the pendant before she could react, his grip firm but not painful. He held it up to the light, turning it slightly, his eyes widening with each passing second. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Where? His voice cracked. Actually cracked. Where did you get this? Talia's pulse thundered in her ears. It was my mother's. What? His eyes snapped to hers. No longer cold, no longer calculating. Wild. Desperate. What was her name? He whispered. I don't. Tell me her name. The desperation in his voice made her stomach clench. Mariella, she breathed. Mariella Mirren. Then the candlelight hit my necklace, and everything changed. Should she trust him? Drop your thoughts below. The world narrowed to the space between them. Mister. Han's fingers were still wrapped around her necklace. The pendant pressed against his palm like he was trying to absorb it through his skin. His breathing had changed, shallow, uneven. One of his security men stepped forward, concern etched across his face, but Mr. Han waved him back with his free hand. Mariella, he repeated, the name barely a whisper. Mariella Mirren. Talia tried to step back, but his grip on the necklace held her in place. Not forcefully, not violently, but with the weight of something she couldn't name. Sir, I need you to let go. I gave this to her. The words hit like a physical blow. Talia's mouth went dry. What? 26 years ago. His eyes never left the pendant. In Seoul, I was a student. She was. He trailed off, his jaw working as if the words were stones he had to spit out one at a time. She was everything. Around them, the restaurant had gone silent. Conversations died mid-sentence. Silverware stopped moving. Even the kitchen noise seemed muted, as if the entire building was leaning in to listen. That's impossible, Talia said, but her voice wavered. My mother never mentioned. She wouldn't have. Mr. Han finally looked up at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her knees weak. Pain. Raw, unfiltered pain. My family made sure of that. He released the necklace slowly, his fingers trembling as they pulled away. The pendant swung free, catching the light one more time before settling back against her chest. You're lying, she whispered. I wish I were. One of his men leaned down, murmuring something in Korean. Mr. Han shook his head sharply, responding in the same language, his tone clipped and final. Talia's mind raced. Her mother had never talked about her father, never mentioned a name, a place, a story. Just told her that some things were better left buried, and that love sometimes meant letting go. But the way this man was looking at her now, like she was a ghost made flesh, made something in her chest tighten. I don't understand, she said quietly. What do you want from me? Want? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I want to go back 26 years and make different choices. I want to tell my younger self to fight harder, to refuse, to find her. His voice dropped to barely audible. I want to know if she ever told her child about me. The floor tilted. Our child. Mr. Han's eyes glistened. I was told she died, that the pregnancy complications, that both of them. He couldn't finish. Talia's hand moved unconsciously to the pendant, gripping it hard enough that the edges dug into her palm. That's not possible, she said again, but the words felt hollow. How old are you? 24. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, tears tracked down his cheeks, silent, devastating. 24, he repeated. The same age she would have been. The dining room was so quiet that Talia could hear her own heartbeat, could feel dozens of eyes on them, could sense the shift in the air like reality itself was bending around this moment. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Silvio's voice cut through the silence. Mr. Han, I apologize if our staff has caused any discomfort. Leave. Mr. Han didn't even look at him. Now, sir, I said leave. The command was soft, but it carried the weight of mountains. Silvio's footsteps retreated quickly, scrambling toward the kitchen. Mr. Han stood slowly, his movements careful, deliberate. He was taller than she'd expected, broader. But in this moment, he looked fragile, like one wrong word would shatter him completely. Please, he said quietly. Sit. I didn't know whether to run or listen. What would you do? Comment pido? Talia sat. She didn't know why, didn't know what force pulled her into the chair across from him. But her legs gave out, and suddenly she was eye level with a man who claimed to be her father? The word felt foreign. Wrong. She'd spent 17 years without one, building walls around that absence until it became just another fact of her life. And now this stranger was trying to tear those walls down with nothing but a necklace and a story. Tell me about her, Mr. Han said softly. Please. Talia's throat tightened. I barely remember her. Anything. She hesitated, fingers still wrapped around the pendant. Memories surfaced in fragments. A smile, a song hummed while cooking, the way her mother's hands had felt braiding her hair. She loved music, Talia said finally. Old jazz, Billie Holiday. She played on this tiny radio in our apartment, dancing while she made breakfast. The words came slowly, painfully. She worked 3 jobs, but never complained. Not once. Mr. Hahn's jaw clenched. She was always like that. Stubborn, strong. You don't get to talk about her like you knew her. I didn't know her. His voice cracked again. For 6 months, I knew her better than I'd known anyone. And then my family found out. Found out what? That I was in love with someone they considered beneath our status. The bitterness in his tone was thick enough to taste. They gave me a choice, end it immediately or lose everything. My inheritance, my future, my name. And you chose your money. I chose wrong. He leaned forward, hands flat on the table. I tried to find her afterward, hired investigators, called every number I had, but she disappeared, changed her name, moved, erased herself completely. And then 6 months later, my family's lawyer told me she died, showed me forged documents, convinced me it was real. Talia's chest felt tight. That's a convenient story. It's the truth. How would I even know? How would I know you're not just some? The necklace. He gestured toward her chest. Look at the back. She hesitated, then pulled it free and turned it over. In the candlelight, she could just make out tiny engraved letters she'd never noticed before. Her mother had always told her not to take it off, not to lose it, but had never explained why. The engraving was in Korean. Mr. Hahn reached across the table slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he touched the pendant with one finger, his hand shaking. It says even the coldest oceans remember warmth, he translated quietly. She told me once that I was too cold, too controlled, that I needed to learn how to feel. A tear slipped down his cheek. So I had this made, proof that she'd changed me. Talia stared at the engraving, her vision blurring. Her mother had worn this every day, had told her it was important, had made her promise to keep it safe, had never explained why. This doesn't prove anything, she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Your birthday. When is it? March 19th. Mr. Hahn's breath caught. He pulled out his phone with trembling fingers, scrolled through something, then turned the screen toward her. It was an old photograph, scanned and digitized. A young man with dark hair and sharp features stood beside a woman with warm brown skin and bright eyes. They were laughing, his arm around her waist, her hand on his chest. The woman was her mother. Younger, happier, alive. Seoul University, October 1999, Mr. Hahn said quietly. 6 months before I was forced to let her go. 6 months before she vanished. Talia couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The photo blurred as tears filled her eyes. I spent half my life building power to protect family, he whispered, his voice breaking completely. Only to learn I abandoned mine without knowing. Around them, the restaurant remained frozen, watching, waiting. And then Han Jae-suk, the man the entire city feared, did something no one had ever seen him do. He wept, not quietly, not with restraint. His shoulders shook. His hands came up to cover his face. Broken sounds escaped his throat, raw and devastating. Talia sat paralyzed, watching this powerful man crumble in front of her. One of his security guards moved forward, uncertain, but Mr. Hahn waved him back blindly. I'm sorry, he choked out. I'm so sorry. I failed her. I failed you. I failed. Talia's hand moved before her brain could catch up. She reached across the table and touched his wrist. He froze. Slowly, he lowered his hands. His eyes were red, his face wet. She never blamed you, Talia heard herself say. She told me once that some people are born into cages they can't escape, but it doesn't make them bad, just trapped. A sound escaped him, half sob, half laugh. She was too forgiving. She was a lot of things. They sat like that for a long moment, her hand on his wrist, both of them crying in the middle of La Valtoria while the city's elite pretended not to watch. Then footsteps approached from behind, quick, angry. Silvio's voice cut through the moment like a knife. All right, that's enough. "Talia, get back to work." His hand closed around her shoulder, yanking her backward. Mr. Han's eyes snapped up, and everything changed. We said her name aloud. I felt the ground shift beneath me. What happens when you touch someone untouchable? Find out in the next chapter. Comment your predictions. Silvio hit the wall before anyone understood what had happened. One moment his hand was on Talia's shoulder. The next, he was pinned against marble with his feet dangling 6 inches off the ground. Mr. Han's security guard held him there effortlessly, forearm pressed against Silvio's throat. The restaurant erupted. Chairs scraped. Glasses shattered. Someone screamed. Mr. Han stood slowly, his face transformed. The grief was gone. What remained was something colder, darker, the thing that made people whisper his name in fear. "You touched her," he said quietly. Silvio's face was turning purple. I didn't know. You grabbed her like property." "Please." Mr. Han raised one hand. The security guard loosened his grip just enough for Silvio to breathe. He slumped against the wall, gasping. Talia's heart hammered. She wanted to move, to speak, but her body refused to cooperate. Around them, wealthy diners stood frozen, phones raised, recording everything. Mr. Han approached Silvio with measured steps. Each footfall echoed like a judge's gavel. "How long?" His voice remained soft, controlled, terrifying in its calmness. "How long what?" Silvio wheezed. "How long have you treated my daughter like she was worthless?" The word daughter rippled through the crowd like electricity. Gasps, whispers. The phones angled for better shots. Silvio's eyes went wide. No, that's not, I didn't." "Answer the question." "I was just managing staff. She's just a waitress." The security guard's grip tightened again. Silvio's words choked off. "Mister." Han leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried across the entire room. "She's not just anything, and you will remember that for however many days you have left in this city." He stepped back and said something in Korean. The security guard released Silvio, who crumpled to the floor, coughing and clutching his throat. Mr. Han turned back to Talia. The coldness vanished the moment their eyes met. He extended his hand toward her, not commanding, but offering. "We're leaving," he said gently. "I still have tables." "Not anymore." Behind them, the kitchen doors burst open. The head chef emerged, followed by 2 line cooks. They stopped dead when they saw Silvio on the ground and Mr. Han standing over him. "Call the police," Silvio gasped. "He assaulted me." Mr. Han didn't even glance at him. He kept his hand extended toward Talia, waiting. She looked at that hand, at the man offering it, at the life she'd built through silence and survival. Then she looked at Silvio, at the man who'd threatened her weekly, who'd blamed her for things she hadn't done, who'd promised she'd end up on the street. Her hand moved before her mind decided. Their fingers touched. Mr. Han's grip was warm. Steady. He pulled her gently to her feet, then positioned himself between her and Silvio. "Send her final paycheck to my office," he said to the head chef, "with a severance bonus of 6 months' salary. If there are any issues, my lawyers will contact you directly." The chef nodded mutely. Mr. Han guided Talia toward the exit, his security team forming a protective circle around them. Cameras flashed. Questions erupted from every direction. "Mr. Han, is it true she's your daughter? How long have you known? What about the mother?" He ignored all of it. His hand remained on Talia's back, protective, grounding, as they moved through the chaos toward the door. Behind them, Silvio screamed, "This isn't over. I'll sue. I'll..." Mr. Han paused at the threshold, didn't turn, didn't raise his voice. "If you speak her name again," he said quietly, "you'll discover exactly how much power I have in this city, and you won't enjoy the lesson." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Then they were outside, cold November air hitting Talia's face. A black car waited at the curb, engine running. Then he whispered, "I was told she died with our child." My heartbeat stopped. Would you protect someone you just discovered? Drop your answer below and subscribe for the next chapter. The car's leather seats were softer than any bed Talia had ever slept in. She sat rigid in the back seat, Mr. Han beside her, his security team in front. The restaurant disappeared behind tinted windows as they pulled into traffic. Her vest still smelled like spilled wine. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Where are we going?" Her voice sounded small. "Somewhere safe." "I don't need safe. I need answers." Mr. Hahn turned to face her fully. In the dim light of the car, he looked older again. Tired. Human. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." "Nothing." Her mind spun with questions, each one fighting for space. "Why now?" she asked finally. "Why did you come to that restaurant tonight after all these years?" "I didn't know you existed until I saw that necklace." "But why were you there at all?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Business meeting. Routine. I own partial interest in several establishments. I inspect them occasionally." He gestured vaguely. "It was supposed to be unremarkable. And instead you found me. Instead I found everything I'd lost." The car turned onto a quieter street. Brownstones rose on either side, their windows glowing with warm light. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that in this car, two strangers were discovering they were family. "I don't trust easily," Talia said. "I wouldn't expect you to. My whole life I've been alone. Foster homes, group shelters, people who promised things then disappeared." She met his eyes. "How do I know you're not just another person who'll leave?" Mr. Hahn flinched like she'd struck him. "You don't," he admitted. "I can't prove I'll stay. I can only promise to try. Promises are just words." "Then let me show you instead." The car pulled to a stop in front of a building that looked like it belonged in a movie. Doorman in uniform. Marble lobby visible through glass doors. The kind of place where people like her got turned away at the entrance. "This is where you live?" she asked. "One of my residences, yes." She laughed, sharp, bitter. "Of course it is." He opened the car door and stepped out, then offered his hand again. She stared at it, remembering how it had felt in the restaurant. Safe. Steady. She took it. The lobby was exactly as ridiculous as she'd imagined. Crystal chandeliers. Polished floors. A doorman who greeted Mr. Hahn by name and didn't even blink at Talia's waitress uniform. They rode the elevator in silence, the numbers climbing past 20, then 30, then 40. When the doors finally opened, they stepped directly into a penthouse apartment that took up the entire floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Manhattan sprawled below them, lights twinkling like fallen stars. "I can't be here," Talia said suddenly. I don't belong." "You belong wherever you choose to be. That's easy for you to say." Mr. Hahn turned to face her fully. The apartment's soft lighting caught the silver in his hair, the lines around his eyes. "Nothing about this is easy," he said quietly. "I spent 26 years believing I'd lost the woman I loved and the child we created. 26 years building walls around that pain until I forgot what it felt like to be human." His voice cracked. "And now you're here, real, standing in front of me. And I don't know how to be your father because I never learned how." Tears burned Talia's eyes again. "I don't know how to be anyone's daughter," she whispered. "Then we'll figure it out together." He moved to a cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. When he returned, he sat on the coffee table between them. "What's that?" "Everything I could find about your mother after I was told she died. Hospital records, fake ones it turns out. Death certificates, also fake. Every document my family used to convince me you were both gone." Talia's hands trembled as she reached for the folder. "I kept them," he continued. "Even after I accepted the lie. I kept them because letting go completely felt like betrayal." He paused. "I should have looked harder. Should have questioned. Should have fought. You were young. I was a coward." Talia opened the folder. The first document was a death certificate from Mariella Mirren, dated March 1999. Cause of death: complications during childbirth. Infant status: deceased. Seeing her mother's name like that, reduced to bureaucratic paperwork and lies, made her chest tighten. They forged all of this. My family has resources, connections. When they want something erased, it gets erased. And you believe them. I was 22 years old and terrified of losing everything I'd ever known." His voice dropped. "That's not an excuse. Just a fact." Talia flipped through more pages. More lies. More evidence of a life that had been stolen from her mother. From her. And something fell out from between the documents. A photograph. different from the one he'd shown her in the restaurant. This one showed her mother alone, standing on a bridge somewhere, smiling at the camera with her whole face. Young, happy, alive. On the back, in faded ink, even the coldest oceans remember warmth. Talia's vision blurred completely. Mr. Han sat beside her, not touching, just present. She loved you, Talia whispered. I can see it in her face. I love her too. Not enough to fight, but enough that it never went away. They sat in silence, grief hanging between them like a third presence. But just as I began to trust, footsteps approached from behind. Can you forgive someone who failed before they knew you existed? Comment below and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. The apartment door crashed open. 3 men in suits burst through, moving with military precision. Mr. Han's security team materialized from nowhere, positioning themselves between the intruders and Talia. She scrambled backward, the photograph still clutched in her hand. Stand down, one of the intruders barked in Korean. Mr. Han rose slowly, his body language shifting again into that cold, controlled thing that made people afraid. Who sent you? Your brother. The lead man pulled out his phone, showing the screen. He wants to talk. Mr. Han's jaw clenched. He reached for the phone, then hesitated, glancing at Talia. It's family business, he said quietly. You should go to the guest room. No. Her voice surprised her with its steadiness. If this is about me, I stay. Something flickered in his eyes. Pride, maybe, or respect. He took the phone and pressed it to his ear. Hyun, a voice on the other end spoke rapid Korean. Angry, sharp. Mr. Han's responses were clipped, controlled. But his free hand curled into a fist. The conversation lasted maybe 2 minutes. Then he hurled the phone against the wall. It shattered, pieces scattering across marble floors. The security teams stood frozen, unsure whether to react. What did he say? Talia asked. Mr. Han's shoulders rose and fell with deep breaths. When he turned to face her, his expression was carved from stone. My family knows about you. Ow! The restaurant. Someone recorded everything. It's already online. Trending. My brother is demanding I come to Seoul immediately to handle the situation. Situation. The word tasted bitter. He used a different term. Less polite. Talia stood, the photograph still gripped in her hand. What does he want you to do? Make you disappear. The words hung in the air like a blade. Not permanently, Mr. Han added quickly. He wants me to pay you off. Set you up somewhere far from here. Ensure you never use the family name or make any claims. And if you don't, his expression darkened. They'll handle it themselves. The lead intruder shifted his weight. Mr. Han, your brother expects an answer by morning. He'll have one. What will you tell him? Talia's voice was barely a whisper. Mr. Han crossed the room until he stood directly in front of her, close enough that she could see the determination in his eyes. That I spent 26 years following their orders. That I let them convince me my child was dead. That I built an empire on their terms and lived half a life because I was too afraid to fight back. His voice dropped, and that I'm done being afraid. They'll come after you. Let them try. You'll lose everything. I've already lost everything that mattered. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he placed his hand over hers, over the photograph she still held. But I have a chance to stop losing now. Talia's throat tightened. 24 years of being alone, of surviving without protection, of learning that the only person she could count on was herself. And now this man, this stranger who was somehow her father, was offering something she'd never had. Choice. What happens if you refuse them? She asked. War. Over me. Over principle. His grip on her hand tightened slightly. I failed you, Mother. I won't fail you. The room was silent except for the distant hum of the city below. The security teams watched. Waited. Talia looked at the photograph in her hand, at her mother's smile, at proof that love had existed once, even if it hadn't survived. She looked up at Mr. Han. Then we fight, she said. Something in his expression shattered and reformed simultaneously. He pulled her into an embrace, sudden, fierce, desperate. She froze for a moment. then slowly wrapped her arms around him. He was shaking. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair. "Thank you for giving me a chance." Before she could respond, one of the intruders cleared his throat. "Mr. Han, your brother also sent a message for the girl." Mr. Han released Talia, but kept one hand on her shoulder. "What message?" The man's face was carefully neutral. "That blood means nothing when there's no proof. And that accidents happen to people who make claims they can't support." The threat was crystal clear. Mr. Han's voice dropped to something lethal. "You go back to my brother. You tell him that if anything happens to my daughter, there won't be enough money in Seoul to protect him from me." The intruder bowed slightly. "I'll relay your response. And tell him one more thing." "Yes, sir. She's not replaceable. She's not a situation. She's my daughter." "She is not replaceable," Mr. Han said. "She is my daughter. What would you risk for family you just discovered?" Subscribe and share your thoughts below. Your story might inspire someone else. Morning came with news vans parked outside. Talia watched from the penthouse windows as reporters gathered like vultures. Satellite trucks, cameras, people with microphones doing live broadcasts while pointing up at the building. She hadn't slept. Neither had Mr. Han. They'd spent the night talking about her mother, about her childhood, about the years between then and now. Filling gaps, building bridges. "They'll want a statement," he said quietly, standing beside her at the window. "What will you tell them?" "The truth." "Which version?" He smiled slightly, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "The one where I found my daughter." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then showed her the screen. News alerts, social media posts. The story had exploded overnight. Mafia boss claims secret daughter. Billionaire discovers heir in restaurant. From waitress to heiress, the necklace that changed everything. "This is insane," Talia whispered. "This is reality now." Another buzz. He answered it, listened for a moment, then ended the call. "My lawyers will handle the press," he said. "But there's something else we need to address first." "What?" "Silvio filed assault charges against my security team. He's also claiming emotional distress and demanding compensation." Talia's stomach dropped. "Can he do that?" "He can try." Mr. Han made another call, this one in Korean. Sharp, efficient. When he finished, he turned back to her. "My legal team is already gathering evidence. Security footage from the restaurant, testimony from staff members, documentation of Silvio's harassment of employees over the years. Will it be enough?" "It will be thorough." Within an hour, things began moving with terrifying speed. Mr. Han's lawyers arrived, 3 of them carrying briefcases and tablets, speaking in legal terms that made Talia's head spin. One of them was a woman named Patricia Chun, mid-40s, with sharp eyes and sharper suits. "We've already filed counterclaims," she explained, setting up her laptop on the dining table. "Workplace harassment, hostile environment, wrongful termination based on fabricated performance issues." "Will Talia have to testify?" Mr. Han asked. "Potentially, but we'll minimize her exposure." "No." Talia's voice cut through the conversation. "If my testimony helps stop him from hurting other people, I'll do it." Patricia looked at Mr. Han, who nodded. "She's stronger than she looks," he said quietly. "I can see that." By afternoon, more developments emerged. Silvio's lawyer had withdrawn the assault charges. No explanation given. Within hours, news broke that he'd been fired from his position and was under investigation for multiple labor violations. "How did that happen so fast?" Talia asked. Mr. Han didn't answer directly. Just said, "People tend to discover their conscience when pressure is applied correctly." She didn't press for details. Wasn't sure she wanted to know. More calls came. His brother in Seoul, demanding another conversation. Business partners wanting clarification. Media outlets offering money for exclusive interviews. Mr. Han declined all of them. "Your education," he said during a quiet moment. "You mentioned nursing school. I was saving up. Still need another year's tuition. Consider it paid." "I can't." "Yes, you can." His tone left no room for argument. "I have decades of missed birthdays to make up for. Let me start somewhere." Talia's throat tightened. "This is too much. It's nowhere near enough." Evening fell. The news vans remained, but inside the penthouse, something had shifted. They ate dinner together, takeout from a place that delivered in actual china plates. They talked about small things, normal things, what she wanted to study, where she'd gone to high school, her favorite books. He told her about soul, about growing up in a family where image meant everything and personal choice meant nothing, about the weight of expectations that had shaped him into someone he barely recognized. I became what they wanted, he said quietly, and lost who I was. You can still find him, Talia offered. Maybe, he looked at her, or maybe I become someone new. Later, as she prepared for bed in the guest room, which was bigger than any apartment she'd ever lived in, there was a knock on the door. Mr. Han stood in the hallway, holding a small box. I almost forgot, he said. This was your mother's. She opened it carefully. Inside was a sketchbook, old and worn. The pages were filled with drawings, portraits, landscapes, abstract designs. And on the first page, in her mother's handwriting, for when you forget what beauty looks like. Tears came immediately. She always drew, Mr. Han said softly, even when she had nothing else. She said art was proof that hope existed. Talia clutched the sketchbook to her chest. She never stopped hoping, he continued. Even at the end. I know that now. They stood in silence for a moment. Then he said, I failed your mother. I won't fail you. But his next words frightened me more than any threat. Now I must protect you from my world. Would you accept protection from someone powerful but dangerous? Subscribe and comment your answer. Your voice matters. 3 weeks later, Talia stood outside the nursing school administration building, acceptance letter in hand. Full scholarship, all expenses paid, a future she'd barely let herself dream about. But her mind wasn't on school. Mr. Han had kept his word. He'd handled the legal issues with Silvio, had quietly compensated other employees who'd been mistreated, had launched an investigation into labor practices across all his business holdings. Not for publicity, for something else, something he called penance. They'd fallen into a routine, weekly dinners, daily phone calls. He taught her about the family business, the legitimate parts at least. She told him about her mother, filling in details he'd missed. They were learning each other, slowly, carefully, but his world came with shadows. That morning, another package had arrived at the penthouse. No return address. Inside was a photograph of Talia leaving the coffee shop she frequented, taken from across the street. Recent. No message. None needed. When she'd shown Mr. Han, his face had gone cold. They're testing me, he'd said quietly. Your family, among others. He'd made calls, increased security, assigned her a protection detail she barely noticed but knew was always there. Is this going to be my life now? She'd asked. Always looking over my shoulder? Only until they understand I'm serious. And how long will that take? He hadn't answered. Now, standing outside the school, she felt the weight of that question. She'd gained a father, gained resources, gained opportunities she never thought possible. But she'd also gained danger. Her phone buzzed. Text from Mr. Han. How did it go? She took a photo of the acceptance letter and sent it. His response came immediately. Proud of you. 3 words that made her chest ache. Her phone rang. She answered. Hey, I know this is complicated, he said without preamble. That's an understatement. You have a choice. You've always had a choice. Talia leaned against the building's brick wall. Students passed by, laughing, talking about exams and parties and normal things. She watched them, wondering what it felt like to be that uncomplicated. What choice? She asked. You can walk away. I'll make sure you're protected, but from a distance. You can have your life without the complications of mine. And if I don't want to walk away, silence on the other end. Then you accept that my world is dangerous. That people will test you, try to use you. That being my daughter comes with consequences. What do you want me to do? I want you to choose what makes you happy. Talia closed her eyes, thought about her mother, who'd chosen to raise her alone rather than compromise her dignity, who'd worked 3 jobs and never complained, who'd been strong in ways Talia was only beginning to understand. She left me the necklace for a reason, Talia said quietly. What reason? To find you. Maybe not now, maybe not like this, but eventually. She opened her eyes, I don't think she wanted me to be alone forever. Mr. Han's breath caught. You're sure? I'm terrified. But yeah, I'm sure. Then we move forward together. Together, she repeated. But I have conditions. Name them. I finish school. I'll become a nurse. I'll build something that's mine, not just yours. Agreed. And you tell me the truth. About everything. No more secrets. No more protection through lies. He was quiet for a long moment. That's harder than you think. I know. But if we're doing this, if I'm really your daughter, then we do it honestly. Honestly, he echoed. I can try. That's all I'm asking. They talked for a few more minutes. Plans for dinner. Details about security. Normal things wrapped in extraordinary circumstances. When she hung up, she looked at the acceptance letter again, at proof that her life was changing in ways she couldn't have imagined a month ago. That night, she thought she was just serving wine. Now she was the daughter of a man the city feared, and he just asked her to choose whether she walked beside him or stayed hidden. By dawn, she'd made her decision. She pulled out her phone and texted him, I'm in. Whatever comes next, we face it together. His response came seconds later, whatever comes next. Talia slipped the acceptance letter into her bag and headed toward campus. Behind her, she knew the security detail followed. Ahead, students moved through their ordinary lives. And somewhere between those two worlds, she would build her own. Would you forgive someone who never knew they abandoned you? Would you step into a dangerous world for family? Tell us in the comments what you'd choose. Your story could inspire someone else facing an impossible decision. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story that could change how you see family, forgiveness, and second chances. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones we need to tell ourselves.